Hi, I'm Kaya.
And I'm Joanna.
And this is Starlit Citadel Reviews.
Bandu is a block-stacking dexterity game from Klaus Zock and Zock Games.
In Bandu, players compete to build the most stable tower while making that more difficult for their opponents. You can play with 2 to 6 players, and it plays in about half an hour.
Now, there are 4 variants of Bandu, each with slightly different rules. They all begin similarly. Players lay out the wooden pieces in the center of the table, and everyone collects their starting currency if they're playing an auction variant.
In all versions of Bandu, players use their blocks to build towers. The first piece that they get is their foundation piece, and all blocks in the tower must be placed on top of the foundation piece without touching the table. And when a player places a block, they can only touch the block that they're currently placing.
Players begin the knockout variant with 10 diamonds. The first player chooses a piece and offers it up for auction, either to the highest bidder or by refusal. If they offer to the highest bidder, players take turns bidding on the piece or passing until only one player is left who has not passed. They pay their bid in diamonds and add the piece to their tower.
If the piece is auctioned by refusal, then that means that players are making bids to avoid taking the piece. So the auctioneer starts by bidding nothing and then passes the piece to their left. That player can either place the piece in their tower, or they can raise the bid by 1 diamond and pass the piece to their left.
Once someone decides to keep the piece, everyone who has bid must pay. There's no way to get more diamonds, and a player who cannot raise the bid to refuse a piece has to take it. If a player's tower falls down, they're out of the game and their pieces become available for auction once again. The last player standing wins.
Pilot High is another auction variant that begins like Knockout. Pieces are auctioned either to the highest bidder or by giveaway. Using the giveaway option, the highest bidder, who wins the piece, chooses which player will add the piece to their tower.
The chosen player can either add the block to their tower themselves or force the auction winner to do it for them. If the tower falls down while the auction winner is building, they can no longer add to their own tower. The other player rebuilds their fallen tower and continues playing.
At any time, a player can declare their tower finished and stop adding pieces to it. If a player knocks over their tower while they're adding a piece, then they are out. When all players are either finished or out, then the towers are measured and the player with the tallest tower wins.
The Building Chain and Tower of Babel variants are designed with younger players in mind. In Building Chain, players begin with the red-stamped Zock pieces as their foundations and take turns choosing pieces from the center and placing them in a chain in the order they were chosen.
Once all of the pieces have been taken, the first player chooses a piece from the beginning of any one of the chains on the table and adds it to their tower. If a player's tower falls, the pieces in it are removed from the game, but that player's chain remains in play. The last player standing wins.
In Tower of Babel, the players work together to build a single tower. So they take turns adding one piece at a time, and if the tower falls down while a piece is being added, then the last player to have added a piece successfully gets 1 diamond. The players start a new tower, and the first player to reach 5 diamonds wins.
So Bandu is a fun and entertaining little game. Now, obviously the first game this is going to remind everyone of is Jenga, but the difference when you open up the box is that there are so many different kinds of pieces. So all of your towers are going to be a challenge to build, and they're all going to look different, and they're all going to be full of strange shapes. So every game is going to be very different, and it's very challenging and very fun to play with. The pieces themselves are also of great quality, so you've got these nice, satisfying wooden blocks to play with, and component quality is always a big thing in my books. Also, I really enjoy how many different variations of the game they've put in the rulebook. So you've got the games that are sort of better for younger players, you've got ones that are great for teaching, you've got sort of the classic Jenga style building the tower together sort of game. So you've got all these different variants, and each of them are very short. And all of them have the same sort of fun aspect, good components, all that kind of stuff. You can play a bunch of different ones in an evening. Now, one thing that you should be aware of when you're playing this game is, of course, when you're playing with pieces like this, and a lot of them around, you are going to have a challenge in cleanup. So you could end up with a situation where your huge tower falls over and all the pieces roll away and you have to crawl under the table and fish under the couch in order to pull them all out and put them back in the box. So, okay, so that's a negative that maybe you should consider when you're purchasing the game.
Obviously, the big challenge that goes with that is table stability. This is a game that if you can play it on like a countertop or a kitchen island or something else that's nailed to the floor, you probably should, because bumping a rickety coffee table is not just going to knock down your own tower, but it's probably going to knock down every single tower at once and just create a catastrophe in terms of both cleanup and obviously breaking up the flow of the game quite a bit. Now, the other potential negative with this game is, as we mentioned, there's a number of different variants, and the two auction ones, they run a little bit more cutthroat, and one of them in particular offers some opportunities for ganging up on weaker players. And I'm talking about Pilot High and that giveaway option it has, where when you're competing in the auction, you're competing potentially to mess with another player's tower and to choose which player you're going to pick on. That can mean that if there's a bad group dynamic going on, a number of people can gang up on one person, and there's not a whole ton that they can do about it, which can be a little bit unpleasant if your group isn't working quite the way it should. If you do like more cutthroat gameplay, though, the auction variants are great. They take this really fun dexterity game and they add an element of tactics and an element of potentially really nasty direct interaction that's really wonderful for the gamers in the crowd. This is a game that can really accommodate a very broad audience. It's incredibly kid-friendly. I mean, you're taking building with blocks and just gamifying it. It's a very natural entry into gaming for young children. It's something that you can play with an entire family. It's completely language independent, so you can choose your group however you want. You're not limited by communication necessarily. And it also hits this one particular sweet spot where on the one hand, it's great for kids. They understand it, they can get a lot out of it, they learn from it, and they have a lot of fun playing with their parents. But it's also a really great game for a group of just adults to play, especially if they've had a little bit to drink, especially because it accommodates a group of 6 people. It almost takes on the character of a party game. And that's a really great sweet spot to hit if you're a parent. So this is a really great game that fills a niche that not every game does all that well.
I have so got this.